I'm in Kosovo today for too short a period, but I was in Belgrade yesterday, and I'm in Kosovo today, and I'm going to be in Bosnia on Monday. And I'm here because the Western Balkans is important for Europe. In our vision, all of the Western Balkan countries have a common future in the European Union. And there are big constitutional issues that are raised by the search for, on the one hand, nationhood and national identity, and on the other hand, common internationalism to address shared risks that don't respect national borders. If you think about economics, social life, terrorism, climate change, these are problems that ignore the debates about nationhood and call for common structures of cooperation. I know that different people around this table have different views about the question of nationhood for Kosovo. But we are not here to debate nationhood for Kosovo, if possible. What I'd like to talk about is how the people of Kosovo can work and live together to solve common problems. Because in the end, constitutions are words, but life is about actions. And the task of politics is to turn words into actions that build a better life for people and that confront the shared problems. And I just want to say a word about why we're having this conversation. Everywhere I go as foreign minister, whether I go to Pakistan to talk about security, or whether I go to Egypt to discuss the Middle East peace process, or even when I went to Congo at the weekend to look at a dramatic and desperate humanitarian situation, I always try not just to meet politicians, but to meet the people on the ground. And so this meeting tries to do justice to that recognition that in the end, it's about people's actions that count. And we have a very distinguished panelists here. We're the old people here on this panel. I'm sorry to say that. It's a terrible thing to say. But they are here to join the discussion and impart some wisdom. But I'd just like to start with the younger people who are mainly students, all students. Student? Yes. All students. Just with a simple question. Tell me what you are a student of. What is your subject? What level are you at? And what are your aspirations for yourself? Yeah, start. Yeah, either language. Yeah. Micro. You need a microphone.
Treća godina sam prava. Pored toga, ja sam već 4 godine u civilnom društvu, prema tome ovdje dolazim ispred nevladine organizacije. Okay. Now it's okay. Znači, Stojanović Aleksandar, treća godina prava, već nekoliko godina radim u civilnom društvu, bavim se ljudskim pravima, bavim se pitanjima civilnog društva, i ja lično i organizaciju koju radim pokušavamo da damo određeni doprinos sa možda nekim rešenjima koje nudi civilno društvo, a ono je nekako između nekih velikih politika koje se vode po pitanju Kosova. Pa prema tome, eto, možda kasnije možemo da pričamo o nekim konkretnim stvarima, šta možemo da uradimo bez obzira na velike probleme koje postoje, možda oko nekih bitnih političkih pitanja, ali mislim da bez obzira na to moramo da tražimo rešenja i da pokušamo da nađemo rešenja, ne treba čekati. Hvala.
Just tell me, do you want to, as a professional career, what would you like to do?
Pa eto, možda oblast ljudskih prava, ono što je vezano za odnose sa ljudima i mislim da je to dobro.
First of all, I would like to thank you and for giving me the chance of being here and all of us to give our opinion. Secondly, I'm a student, a freshman of American University here in Pristina, American University of Kosovo. And what I'm planning to do and becoming is business manager or something related to diplomacy. Thank you.
I'm really glad to be with you tonight. My name is Besat Tume, and I'm a student of political sciences in the University of Pristina. And I'm honored also for being with my professor here. And my future career, I think in the beginning I should be a very good student. I'm looking for MA degree to continue with studies and and in the same time to work with in civil society. To take an active role in civil society in human rights fields, and maybe in the future, in the long-term future, maybe I can see the way how I can contribute for my country. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Rino Ragoyani. I'm studying political science too in the third year. About the future, in politics I wouldn't be involved, otherwise someone would offer me to be Minister of Foreign Affairs or something. But until now I'm being involved in civil society, but for further education I would like, I guess, international relations and diplomacy, something.
Dobro večer. Ja sam Vuk Mitrović i dolazim iz Kosovske Mitrovice i severnog dela sa Prištinskog univerziteta koji izbega u Kosovsku Mitrovicu. Ja sam student pravnog fakulteta 4. godina. Također se bavim civilnim društvom i u mom daljem profesionalnom radu želeo bih da se također posvetim radu u civilnom društvu, lokalnoj samoupravi i tim stvarima i da pomognem srpskoj zajednici na Kosovu i Metohiji. Hvala.
Now, can I ask you, how do you think communities can be brought together? Because whatever the constitutional setup, there are common problems that need to be addressed. And talk to me a bit about whether or not, just in the daily course of university or work life, you would meet people from the quote-unquote other community, and if so, and if not, what can be done about that? I mean, it doesn't have to be the same order, you just...
Generalno, ne znam, današnji odnose između Srba, Albanaca ili između manjine i Albanaca možemo da okarakterišemo možda pre svega sa nekim ekonomskim terminima. Postoje ekonomska saradnja. Međutim, ekonomsku saradnju vrlo često ne prati saradnja u razvoju odnosa kada su u pitanju neke druge sfere, recimo poboljšanje poverenja. Zajednice su dosta odvojene jedno od drugih i 9 godina posle rata postoji veliko podozrenje. Tako da između fakulteta ne bih mogao da kažem da postoji zvanična saradnja. Neka vrsta saradnje postoji između nevladinog sektora i to je na dosta niskom nivou. Prema tome, ukoliko se za sada ne postoji ni jaka mreža srpskog civilnog društva, možda u budućnosti ukoliko stvorimo nešto slično, to može biti most saradnje i neke stvari jednostavno sa nekog višeg spustiti na niži nivo, gde bi trebalo da postoji saradnja, znači na nekom javnom nivou, javne debate i jednostavno raditi na izgradnji poverenja.
Bezat, what do you think?
First of all, I see it's a very big problem because it's a big problem because we don't know each other too much. It's 9 years after the war, and it's the lack of communication between Kosovo Albanians and Kosovo Serbs is. We can see that there is a big lack of communication. So what we should do as a first step, maybe we should start to meet each other to talk about about our problem, because we have the same needs, all the same problems we are facing every day with the same problems, and we have the same needs for improving ourselves. So to cooperate, we should first communicate. This is what I think. Thank you.
I think that something should change from the elementary school. Those are the history books. Because studying for history in two different ways, that doesn't help at all. Yeah, it is different. The enclaves, they study with books from Serbia, and Albanians ones have different. So it is, here is a clash of thoughts from the beginning. So that's the first step, I guess. And then, of course, it's security, because I would like to go to Northern Mitrovica or to Gračanica or whatever, but it's that you don't feel safe. Otherwise, you're with any organization or anything, because I've been in Gračanica only once, and that was when we were with foreigners, and we were a group from Albanians, Serbs, and also like Europeans. So in that time, we kind of felt more secure, but I wouldn't take that risk going by my own and maybe sitting in a bar and speaking freely in Albanian. But it's a different story in Pristina, for example. People from enclaves can come to Pristina and like socialize if you have someone that you know from before, and not maybe socializing in a bar. That's not, we didn't come in such a level yet, but we hope that this will change. But I think that history books are the first one that should be changed.
And what do most, if one can generalize, what do most Kosovo Albanians think are the characteristics and the nature of Kosovar Serbs?
They're Kosovars. We don't have such a prejudice.
There's not
and
prejudice.
Stereotypes and stuff.
I would answer to this question. We used to know each other very well, so we.
That's a good point.
So we know each other, or actually, we have this lack of communication in this last 9 years, but
that's interesting.
So it's kind of, but.
Do you want to come in, Donieta? Yeah. So this is not the Middle East. I mean, you have lived together and now you've been apart.
Yeah, going back 9 years, just before the war, we had communication skills, and we actually could talk to Serbian teenagers and whatsoever people from that community. That was more than true. And going back to your first question, how can this be much more beneficial?
Yeah.
Well, maybe making or creating forums, youth forums, can help a lot. Me personally, I was to this forum in London, rode to Davos once, was to Guildford, and I had the chance to talk and to discuss and to debate with my colleague that was Serbian. So yeah, that is real, and there can be communication between them, if you just want.
Lepo je, dobro je čuti moje kolege Albanci iz Prištine, ali ja ću vam dati jedan primjer. Ja sad kad sam dolazio iz Kosovske Mitrovice, ja sam trebao da prvo zakažem taksi koji će da dođe po nas, pa da bi nas vratio zbog sve te bezbednosti. I čovek koji nas je vozio je taksista i kojeg smo pitali da li vozi po Prištini, da li ide po Prištini. I on mi je rekao da idem, ali kaže ja moram tiho da pričam srpskim, jer ako bi pričao glasno srpskim to bi smatrao i provokaciju. I ako mislite da je moguć suživot u takvim uslovima kada nam je sloboda kretanja srpskom stanovništvu ograničena na severni deo Kosova, na enklave, na odlazak u Prištinu bilo gde, kad je komplet naša biblioteka koja se nalazi u Prištini nedostupna srpskim studentima, smatram da to nisu uslovi koji su normalni za studiranje i za razvoj jedne mladog čoveka i bilo kakve ličnosti. Tako da to predstavlja veliki problem, ali početi sa debatom i razgovorom treba. Velika je šteta što su prekinuti politički razgovori na visokom nivou o budućnosti i statusu Kosova i Metohije. Tako da smatram da to treba pokrenuti iznova i da treba dati šansu da se dođe do nekog kompromisa. Ovako ste stvorili od Srba naciju koja je frustrirana i koja se osjeća gubitničkim, što nije dobro. Znači na Balkanu ne treba od nijedne nacije stvarati gubitničku naciju. Hvala.
Zapravo, osvrnuo bi se na ovo pre 99. postojala komunikacija, međutim, nikada nisu otvarana pitanja različitosti ili problema koje postoje između dve zajednice. Uglavnom su sva ta pitanja zatrpavana po tepih i rekao bih da su ipak to bila dva odvojena društva koje su živjela jedno pored drugih, ali ne tako integrisano i glavna pitanja su nekako skrivana i dolazi u situaciju da se ljudi osjećaju neprijatno ako otvaraju ta problematična pitanja. Da, dijalog mora da bude rešenje i bez obzira što je prekinut, dijalog se mora nastaviti jer ne vidim drugo rešenje od strane međunarodne zajednice ili od bilo koga ako zvanični Beograd i Priština ne sednu i ne nastave dijalog. Drugi ljudi sa strane nam prosto ne mogu pomoći u traženju rešenja za probleme kojih ima mnogo. Slažem se da treba dijalog raditi, međutim, posle 99. srpska zajednica je bila pritiskana od strane međunarodne zajednice i traženi su bilo kakvi likovi da uđu bilo gde koji nisu bili dovoljno relevantni da vode te slučajeve. I drugo, srpska zajednica i manjinske zajednice su totalno razbijene. Prvo treba raditi na jačanju njihovih kapaciteta, znači organizovati ih, a onda to će imati mnogo veću snagu u daljim razgovorima.
Let me ask my fellow old people here, we're old together, to give me your thoughts on the questions that I've asked and on the answers that you've heard from the young people here.
Ja sam profesor fakulteta, pa samim tim imam i odgovornost prema ovim mladim ljudima i moje gledanje je u ovom trenutku otprilike nešto što govori da ovi mladi ljudi pre svega više su u funkciji politike i čak i ovaj trenutak koriste da pošalju neke političke poruke kao evo sada ne smemo da prođemo kroz Vračanicu, a 1000 kola prolazi, normalno ljudi sasvim normalno i Albanci i Srbi, čak u mom domu zdravlja dolaze. Sa druge strane isto tako srpska strana govori, mladi su ljudi, pričaju političke teme, govori se o istoriji, o ne znam sada udžbenicima, svima. Istorija ne treba da bude glavni predmet interesovanja. Mladi ljudi moraju da počnu da razmišljaju na jedan drugi način. Mladim ljudima treba da pomognu stariji ljudi. Ili njihovi profesori moraju da pomognu institucionalno, političko i liderstvo i u Beogradu i u Prištini. Da bi se relaksirali odnosi između mladih ljudi, da bi se relaksirali odnosi unutar zajednica koja je prepuna stereotipa jednih od drugima, koja ima svoju priču koje su potpuno suprotstavljene, mi moramo da počnemo sa nečim što je u stvari komunikacija institucionalnog liderstva u Beogradu i institucionalnog liderstva u Prištini. Normalno da jedni druge ne priznaju, ali svakako da taj njihov kontakt utiče na relaksaciju običnih ljudi. Ja moram da vam kažem, individualnih prijateljstava uvek postoji. Mladi ljudi moraju da razumeju da postoji regionalna saradnja, da postoji CEFTA, da danas govorimo, Srbi ne govore albanski, Albanci ne govore srpski. Ovo je mlada generacija koja uzajamno ne govori jezik druge generacije za sporazumevanje. Srbima je svakako potrebno da na prostoru Kosova i Metohije znaju i albanski jezik da bi komunicirali. Kosovo kao deo CEFTE svakako će biti u društvu zemalja koje govore slovenski jezike. Tako da srpski, makedonski, bošnjački, ne znam, hrvatski, slovenački, sve su to jezici koji će vam biti potrebni za komunikaciju. Dakle, moramo naučiti ponovo da govorimo ili da nađemo neki treći jezik, ali svak da osjeti potrebu za nečim što je mnogo šire od onoga što predstavlja jedna enklava od 200 metara ili jedno Kosovo od 10.000 kvadratnih kilometara.
Minister, tell us your perspective on this, including the history books question.
I'll try actually to be very, very short, although I'll try to take a little bit, to give a comment regarding the history textbooks. First, in my interpretation, history ends here actually by the 17th of February, and the focus should be simply the future. We used to live in a country where we were projecting the future by thinking in the past, and we should simply start how to project the future in terms of thinking on how to change the situation right now. The views which we heard until now are actually very diverse, but I would say that there was actually never a conflict between Albanians and Serbs within Kosovo as such. The conflict was always something which was projected by outside. And I think the situation now, it's actually a new situation which could be used in the best way how actually to improve the life of the young people. I think what those young people needs around the table is actually better education, qualitative education. And we need to have a system of education which would react to the local needs and global demands. We need to have people who in the future would be able actually to compete with the market economy in the region, in Europe. And some of the thinking was actually in that direction. History textbooks are something which of course should be we should talk about that, how to start the process. But I don't think that it is the job of the government, because it belongs to the past where the governments were involved in the writing the history textbooks. The process should be actually not top-down, but the opposite regarding the history textbooks. We have a situation that the kids are simply divided in the school by two different curricula, but I think our job should be actually how to improve the situation in order to have common public life, which would be the best base for a new political community. I think we should simply start perceiving ourselves as a new political community which is based on citizenship, because at the end of the day we are citizens of this country. How it was, why it happened, and how it happened, I think it belongs to those who lived until last year and those who are writing history textbooks. But the common ground for everybody should be actually the current situation and a clear vision for the future. And a clear vision for the future is actually good education and jobs. What these people around the table needs is actually how they can get a job when they're finishing actually their studies.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that time will heal if people are given the chance to develop their potential in employment, in education, etc.
Exactly. We have a very good framework in order to build a new society from the scratch. and this framework, it is actually the Atisai Plan. If all of us are actually committed to start implementing this framework, it would change a lot in Chaglavica, in Gračanica, in all parts, in rural areas, in urban areas. And I mean, as you said, how actually to translate the politics from the words into the concrete action. And I think this, it is actually one of the best framework to build here a future. But at the same time, economy is actually a crucial factor, because economy would be actually something which would be able to provide this country with new cohesion, new coherence.
Okay. Let me ask these two gents to add, and then I think the younger people should comment on what they've heard from the rest of us. So.
I had a chance many times to talk to all you guys, and we disagree strongly just about two things. The first one is something what Rinora mentioned, that's about the history. That is how everything started. You know, we have different views on that issue, and that is why I don't want to talk about it. The second issue, Mr. Chairman mentioned, you know, in the beginning of the talk, and that's about the status. All other issues are in common. We have the common concern about of economy, unemployment, lack of good infrastructure, not enough good education, you know, health protection, social welfare, and those things. We can work together on that issue only if that issue is not going to be politicized by one of the sides engaged. But unfortunately, you know, everything is in politics in Kosovo. If we have no water, that's a politic, because the water plant is in the southern part, that means controlled by the Albanians, but the water source in the north, it's controlled by the Serbs. For new approach, we need a new political elite. Unfortunately, we have no strong institutions, and everybody is aware about it. And those institutions cannot be improved over the night. But we should all work very hard not to undermine the institutions by working out of the institutions somehow, but jointly try to improve those institutions. And secondly, it's important to have the new political elite, and I can see among you guys, you young people today, possibly new future political leader. But suddenly you should change slightly your approach, you know. I would really regret if the Kosovo government or Serbian government will waste the energy by putting the flags everywhere and the state symbols, because that's the way to hide the real problems, you know. As long as you are spending your time and your energy to put the flags in every single corner, you'll not think about infrastructure, suddenly not about education or health protection. We can overcome that issue, suddenly, but be aware that nationalism and your, let's say, euphoria about of the status is not going to be something you can eat tomorrow. Let's slow down a little bit. Let's think about how you can criticize those who are in charge. Mr. Enver Hoxha, I'm just here by chance, he's here, but anyone, you know, starting from Prime Minister, being a corrective factor, you know, to warn them they're doing not very well, spending your time. And that is something what you cannot, let's say, compensate sometimes later on.
Well, being the last, I have the advantage of trying to sum up. I have 3 points. The first one is, I think that the interethnic distance is great. And I think the 9 years and violence have done great harm. And I don't think there is an easy solution to interethnic distance. I think we will live with it for some time. And we will live in parallel societies. And I don't think there's an easy way in bridging this gap. There's no way by which you put people together and say, okay, now sort out your problems. Because these problems came from a stronger historical perspective. The second point, which this generation does not know, which I think I should tell, is that in your age, I had a passport with which I could travel visa-free in Europe. And now my ex-passport was a symbol of a relationship with Europe in the first point. The state was not obviously a functioning one at the end, and it disintegrated. But at some point, it was a state that had a relationship with Europe. And the key question, this is my third point, the key question for our society or societies is actually what kind of relationship do we create with Europe? What kind of relationship do we create through Europe between ourselves, between our parallel societies? Now, next year there will be a golden opportunity, a window of opportunity, maybe a small one. Because the way we create a relationship with Europe is palpable, is measurable. Serbia will be in a situation in which, if it goes through certain developments, like arrest of Mladic, it might well be knocking, and deservedly, at the door of the European Union to be a candidate. As we know, Serbia has a great interest, not only in the European Union, but also in the Serb population here. Well, you cannot be a candidate state, cannot receive candidate status in the European Union unless you sort out the way you communicate with your population and your neighbors. On the other side, Kosovo cannot remain a continuous hostage to developments in Serbia. The way forward is actually for Kosovo and Serbia to help each other on their European path. And that means getting out from the process of where we are now, in blocking each other, but actually in trying to help each other. It's in Kosovo's interest that Serbia get candidate status next year. It's in Serbia's interest that Kosovo enter a stabilization and association process as every other country. And that then reflects also in your lives, in the way you communicate, because the greater framework of your communication is how do we communicate with Europe, not only how do we communicate with ourselves.
Very good. Can people talk to me about European Union? I've just given a speech to the Kosovo Parliament saying that there is a place in the European family for all the countries of the Western Balkans, and that we will work for that. And that whether you're a citizen of Serbia, a citizen of Macedonia, a citizen of Kosovo, you're a citizen of Europe. Is that a uniting factor for the different communities of Kosovo, or not? Or don't answer that question if you want to.
Heavy question, probably.
U pravilu, sem našeg nacionalnog identiteta treba da postoji veoma izražen jak nadnacionalni identitet, a to je evropski identitet i mi tom identitetu svi pripadamo. Međutim, nisam siguran da li ćemo baš, sem ovih priča koje se čuju, a dobre su, da napravimo korak napred ukoliko ne postoje iskrene političke volje da se stvari rešavaju. I zaista, sem nekih deklarativnih izjava da Kosovo treba da ide vamo ili tamo, mora da postoji iskrena politička volja da menjamo našu stvarnost. I pitanje je koliko ćemo biti zapravo dosledni na tom putu. Mislim da je to zaista stvar svih ljudi koji žive na ovom prostoru. Koliko čvrsto i iskreno pristupimo ovom procesu, onda možemo da se nadamo određenim promenama. U suprotnom, vrlo teško.
I've been part of a project that was called Our Future European Integration. And we have visited the European Parliament, and we have met members of European Parliament. And the way to European Union, we know that is kind of far away. And of course, if someone would do an invitation to Kosovo to join European Union, I wouldn't support that, because I know that we're not ready without economy and without stuff. We wouldn't be able to. And But we know that the collaboration comes only when it's an interest. For example, we have the example in Brezovica, where Albanians and Serbs go there. Why? Because it's a touristic place where everyone goes for fun and someone for making money and everything. So I think that when people see that there is an interest, they can collaborate.
Okay, sorry, go on. Let me ask another question. When I was in Serbia this morning, two people, quite senior people, said that there was a lot of concern in Serbia about the treatment of Serb historic heritage sites in Kosovo, and obviously this is something that's addressed in part by the constitution. But I wonder are they right to be worried that these historic sites might be desecrated or otherwise injured, hurt, or is this a false fear? Who can tell me about that?
Pa ja bih počela ovako, u stvari slušam mlade ljude i jako bih voljela da kažem, svi mi želimo da budemo deo Evrope, ali pre svega moramo da razmislimo o onome što suštinski podrazumeva da mi treba da radimo na tome da Evropa nas prepozna kao partnere. Mladi ljudi, sa njima se malo radi i oni ne znaju da mnogo svi zajedno treba da radimo na standardima koji će ovaj prostor preporučiti Evropi. A to podrazumeva niz zajedničkih akcija koje vi mladi možete da organizujete. Akcije kao što su akcije, recimo, koje bi podrazumevale da prostor Kosova i Metohije više ne bude straha za civilno stanovništvo, a da relaksirani i slobodni budu ubice i kriminalci. Znači, zajedno da pođete u akciju da stanovništvo bude relaksirano, a da pomognemo u nečemu što je izolacija ekstremista i ljudi koji su odgovorni za zločin, bez obzira iz koje zajednice dolaze. Drugu aktivnost koju bi zajedno mogli da odradimo ili da odradite, to su aktivnosti gde bi kazali da svi ljudi imaju pravo da žive u svojim kućama, bez obzira ko su i šta su. Imovina da im se vrati, da ljudi mogu slobodno da raspolažu. Evropa podrazumeva, deco, slobodu kretanja i robe i ljudi i jedan stabilan, bezbedonosni sistem. I ma šta mi govorili, ma šta radili, mi Evropi možemo da se preporučujemo samo na način koji podrazumeva da nas ona prihvata, da mi počnemo da radimo na stvarima koje će uređivati naše društvo. Ja zaista znam da, nažalost, preko 150 manastira i crkava sa na ovom prostoru koje svedoče o trajanju srpske zajednice ili Srpske pravoslavne crkve je srušeno. Samo 17. marta u jednom danu srušeni su preko 36 manastira i crkava od nekih vrlo bitnih. Ja ne želim da sporim i ne želim da negiram da su u toku rata rušeni i džamije, ali od vremena kada se ovaj prostor proglasio prostorom mira, mi nažalost imamo aktivno rušenje crkava i manastira koje svedoče i koje su od vrednosti ne samo za srpsku zajednicu i ne samo za srpsku državu, nego od vrednosti i evropske i svetske. Sa druge strane, žao mi je što ovaj prostor je potpuno promenio svoj identitet i u hrišćanskom smislu. Nemam ništa protiv što se nekoliko stotina džamija napravilo u poslednjih 10 godina, ali svakako ugroženost srpske kulturne baštine, pravoslavne, zaista jeste realnost i svi smo zabrinuti koliko za njih, u isto vreme i za slobodu ispovedanja svoje vere. I to je zaista jedna realnost o kojoj svi zajedno možemo da razgovaramo i svi zajedno da utičemo da sve vere i svi narodi imaju pravo da idu u svoje crkve, u svoje džamije, u svoje sinagoge i da se ispovedaju i da počnemo da razmišljamo na zdrav način.
I mean, regarding the Europe, I mean, first, in my interpretation, Europe is nothing else just the best way how to modernize a society. Modernization meant always how to be able to be part of the world and to compete with the rest in the world. In that sense, I think for Kosovo, for Serbia, for Macedonia, for all of the states in the Balkans, the best way actually to prepare societies to modernize themselves, to compete with the rest in the world, to be part of the world in all levels, is actually European way. Regarding cultural heritage, I think cultural heritage in the past, it had here actually a political mission. And I think this mission has already ended. In the past, cultural heritage, not just here, but in different other states in the Balkans, was simply used and misused in order to confirm who was the first in this country. I don't think that this question, it is an issue for today. I was part of the Vienna process where we were actually negotiating for 2 years how to create mechanisms and policies in order to protect cultural heritage. In the last year since the independence, we hadn't any kind of incidents regarding the cultural heritage, and I don't think that there is any kind of reason for fears what is going to happen for that. And not just because of us who are sitting in this room, but for an ordinary man, a man who is living in a village in different parts from different social and ethnic background. This cultural heritage belongs to all people who are living here. When this cultural heritage was created, there were actually not nations in the sense which we understand today. In that sense, people simply perceive them as part of their cultural heritage. Cultural heritage is actually the best argument how to have a heterogeneous society. And the idea of the statehood, which was nothing else just how to provide the society with clarity and security, was always how to have a heterogeneous society as it is. In that sense, I'm pretty sure that cultural heritage in the future could be used to present Kosovo as it is outside. And of course, I mean, we understand that there are crucial cultural heritage monuments here who, for the Serb identity, are very crucial in that sense. I mean, we are very much committed actually to protect them, to promote them as something which belong to everybody. When we are talking about Europe, we know that actually in every society there are existing double identities, and cultural heritage simply shows that this double identity can be promoted actually by protecting and promoting this.
Okay.
I think it's important to stress that cultural heritage is not only about yesterday, but cultural heritage has to do with the way we see the future. And cultural heritage cannot be protected by soldiers. It's not their jobs. They can safeguard it for the moment. But it's about, cultural heritage is actually about participation of the people. And cultural heritage, in one way, symbolizes a way forward for people to actually engage. And what I mean specifically is that cultural heritage represents only one area of life in which all communities ought to be engaged, and especially the Serb community in Kosovo. If there is more engagement, there is less inter-ethnic distance. If there is more participation in institutions, there's more responsibility. And if there's more responsibility, then there's a greater accountability of the state. And this is important not only in cultural heritage, it's important in decentralization. Ultimately, it's important in every single area of life. Kosovar Serbs must participate in institutional life, not only because of the heritage, but because of the future.
Okay, very good. So.
Serbs has quite strong identity and we feel ourselves, you know, the same like those living in the north, let's say, but the same with the Serbs in Serbia and elsewhere. You might be never remarked that we are never calling ourselves Kosovo Serbs. We are the Serbs from Kosovo. That's a different, that's a geographical, you know, determination, let's say. The Albanians has a strong national identity. And apart these two ethnic communities, we have a third one, which it's a small one, but Turks also have a very strong identity. By having strong identity, that means having a great respect to the religious sites. By promoting the new approach, let's say building the confidence, suddenly you should not, how to say, destroy it or even disregard, you know, those religious sites. The worst thing that someone can do to the other community is to do so, to harm, let's say, the religious sites or historical cultural heritage. Europe is all about tolerance and in diversity. You know, and it's not maybe on me to speak about it. We have the Europeans here, members of the EU, but we are all Europeans. You know, they can talk much more about it. But you are the young people. You have to understand that the first thing you should learn, you know, from the European lesson is we are the different, but it doesn't mean that we cannot talk to each other, we cannot cooperate. Someone mentioned the economy, and I want to bring you back on that issue. We have so many things in common. And there is no single way to make the Kosovo Albanians happy if the Kosovo Serbs are not going to be. My background is a manager, and there are a couple of conditions to have the good economical situation. First of all, it's investment, you know, in our circumstances. But there is no investment if there is a political instability. And there is no political stability if you have one of the major, community totally dissatisfied with the current situation. The second issue is the infrastructure. That's about, who is dealing with infrastructure, Minister for Infrastructure, whoever, I can't remember at the moment, Fatmir Limaj, okay, there's someone who should deal with those infrastructures, which are very bad at that moment and the very particular moment. By building the infrastructure, he's going to create the condition to employ you, young people. If you are employed, you are not jobless. You are not jobless, you will not do anything wrong. As long as you are, busy with the business. We have expression in Serbian, but I will just tell you because you will maybe understand what I wanted to say. The jobless priest is baptizing the cows, and cattle. That means if you have no job, you can do many bad things, including destroying the Serbian Orthodox Church. Please think about it. That's a very dangerous, it's a very bad for all of us, because that's not the way how we can bridge our mutual communication.
Let me just sum this up. One of the most frustrating things about these conversations is when it gets interesting, it's time to finish. Just in respect of the last point, we have a saying, the devil makes work for idle hands. And I think that is quite a worthwhile consideration in thinking about the future. As I say, it's frustrating to have only an hour when so many decades, if not longer, of history and ideas to develop. Let me just say a couple of things. First of all, every society is going through this challenge of reconciling diversity and unity. Different challenge, but every society is doing it. No society is perfect. And if you can come to parts of the UK where there is an amazing diversity and an amazing tolerance. But you can also come to parts of the UK where there isn't much diversity and there are big walls between communities. Sometimes those walls exist on the grounds of race, sometimes on the grounds of... So no one's perfect here, and there's got to be lots of lessons learned from the different ways in which you bridge the divides. And I think it's important that you recognize that you're not alone in trying to work this through. Second point, the former president of the US, Bill Clinton, has a really clever phrase. He says, we're actually 99% the same, but we spend 99% of the time talking about the 1% different, which is a clever point. And what he's saying is, he's actually done the science and says that in genetic terms we are 99% the same. 1% that explains the difference as to why some people are white and some people are black and some people are Chinese, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think that the couple of people who've mentioned common humanity in the last hour, I think are in the right ballpark. Because the truth about the risks of the modern world is that they don't distinguish on grounds of race or religion or creed or color or even national identity. And society, it might be diversity between men and women, it might be diversity between different races, it might be diversity on grounds of ability, disability, but those societies that make the most of the talents of all of their diverse people will be the most successful. And you've got a long, hard past to make up for. But you also have one inestimable advantage, which is that you are the youngest country in Europe. Youngest not just in terms of how long, I'm not making a political statement about Kosovo being a country. I'm saying that as the youngest country in Europe in the sense of the youngest population in Europe. And it's interesting, one of our cities, Birmingham, that it's been a city for the youngest time, it's got the youngest population in Europe. And it has decided that the youth of its city is its greatest advantage. And I think that one thing for you to think about is whether or not the youth of your country is a disadvantage, because although young people are imbued with a sense of culture, it is learnt, not experienced, inherited rather than experienced. That gives an opportunity to more. Not often ministers do this. Very much, and good luck. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. One more announcement. These wonderful machines that allow people to talk to each other with different languages, we are donating to the media center so that they can promote precisely this sort of dialogue. Thank you.